Hello, I'm Emilee Mooney Scott, an environmental partner at Robinson & Cole. Thank you for watching the Release Report, a video series that highlights key features of Connecticut's new Release-Based Cleanup Regulations, or RBCRs, slated to go into effect on March 1st, 2026. This is Episode 9. Today, we will discuss the end of the remediation process, documenting that remediation is complete and the matter is closed. As with previous episodes, additional details are available in a companion post on the Robinson & Cole Environmental Law Plus blog. At the end of the remediation process, the party that created or maintained the release must document that remediation is complete and no further action is required. In this episode, we will discuss the different documentation requirements under the RBCRs. First, let's review documentation requirements under the Transfer Act so the contrast between the two is clearer. As we have discussed in prior episodes, the Transfer Act requires a site-wide investigation and remediation effort. When this is done, a licensed environmental professional, or LEP, prepares a document called a verification. The verification attests that the entire parcel has been investigated in accordance with prevailing standards and guidelines, and that the establishment has been remediated in accordance with the remediation standards. After the verification is submitted, the Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, or DEEP, can initiate an audit of the verification within 1 year. If there is no audit, or if DEEP is satisfied after the audit, then the verification stands and the Transfer Act process is complete. By contrast, under the RBCRs, documentation is developed and submitted on a release-by-release basis. Under the RBCRs, documentation that a release has been remediated to the extent required will be provided in a Release Remediation Closure Report. The RBCRs provide a list of the information that Release Remediation Closure Reports must include, and further detail is provided in the companion blog post. The companion blog post also provides additional details on a pathway for addressing Transfer Act sites through Release Remediation Closure Reports, following a statutory update earlier this year. Release Remediation Closure Reports may be prepared either by an LEP or, for less impactful releases, a Permitted Environmental Professional, or PEP. We discussed PEPs in Episode 5 of the Release Report. These Release Remediation Closure Reports will be submitted to DEEP if the underlying release was required to be reported to DEEP. This applies to new releases to the land and waters of the state, called emergent reportable releases, reported to DEEP under the Spill Reporting Regulations, which we discussed in Episode 4. It also applies to existing releases required to be reported to DEEP under the RBCRs, as we discussed in Episode 3. As we also discussed in Episode 3, not all existing releases must be reported to DEEP. If a release is not reportable, the Release Remediation Closure Report need not be submitted to DEEP, but the RBCRs still require that such report be prepared, retained for 10 years, and provided to DEEP upon request. Release Remediation Closure Reports and other records will be subject to audit by DEEP, as verifications are now. The audit process will look a little different under the RBCRs, however. Under the Transfer Act, DEEP audits the final verification report submitted at the end of the remediation process. DEEP does not audit interim documents like completion of investigation reports, although the audit of the final verification may bring to light issues with those interim documents. By contrast, under the RBCRs, DEEP can audit the Release Remediation Closure Report and any other reports required to be signed off by an LEP or certified by a PEP. In other words, interim documents like tier checklists can be audited. In another change from the Transfer Act, the RBCRs set forth different levels of DEEP review and audit. A screening audit is an administrative review by DEEP performed within 180 days after a release record is submitted. This screening audit may commence and be conducted without notice to the LEP, PEP, or responsible party. DEEP may reject a release record after a screening audit and notify the LEP, PEP, or responsible party that a new release record is required. A focused audit is the review of a single release record and may address the entire record or focus on specific areas. These may be selected at random or identified through screening audits. Notice is provided, which must include identification of additional information necessary for DEEP to determine compliance. A focused audit may result in acceptance of the release record, the order for a more detailed full audit, or outright rejection of the release record. A full audit is a review of several or all of the release records associated with a release. This also involves notice and identification of additional information needed. Such a full audit can result in DEEP rejecting one or more of the release records and requiring resubmission. So, to review, under the RBCRs, completion of remediation is documented on a release-by-release basis, rather than a site-wide basis. Reports will still be audited, but the details will vary from the Transfer Act. This concludes our tour through the RBCRs. We hope you have found it informative. In the next few episodes, we will discuss how specific stakeholder groups, like real estate owners and manufacturers, should get ready for the RBCRs. We hope you will join us.